Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Your hosts, Joseph and Michelle Whalen, a husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics, are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom.
Welcome to Insights in Entertainment. This is episode 56, Making Hollywood Magical. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my talented and brilliant co-host, Michelle Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How are you doing today, dear?
I'm doing fabulous, and you?
I'm doing awesome. So this week, we're going to be talking about Hollywood studios and how the recent expansions in that park have kind of given it a shot in the arm and renovated it.
Yep.
Then in our Star Wars Insights, we have a Disney-related one at Galaxy's Edge with a very cute proposal. In our entertainment news, we've avoided talking about it so far, but the coronavirus is now seeping into the entertainment side of things here with effects on some of the conventions coming up. So we will talk about that. We have our insightful picks of the week, some upcoming events, and then we'll actually be closing the show out with kind of a little special treat that we got to enjoy earlier this week, related to our insightful pick this week, my insightful pick.
Yep.
So, busy show.
Yep.
Shall we get started?
Why not?
Alrighty, let's do it.
Okay.
Go for Disney Detective.
So this was an interesting story that popped up talking about how Disney World's sleepiest theme park became its hottest in just 2 years. And, you know, so the article basically gives a history of Hollywood studios and really the transformation that started, you know, roughly 2 years ago and how it's just, you know, totally flipped the way the park started out. You know, Walt Disney said himself, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. And I think that's something for a long time they kind of got away from in terms of Disney World and Disney World and Disneyland. You didn't really see a lot of changes going on in any of the parks. You know, maybe they would paint something, but, you know, it took them a while to kind of realize, you know, we need to keep up with things. And I think part of that, you know, the resurgence, you know, because they had the competition from, you know, Universal Studios, and especially with Hogwarts and all the Harry Potter stuff, and realized, you know what, you have to update things and you have to change things in order to keep your guests, you know, wanting to come. So for those of you that don't know, Hollywood Studios was actually originally called Disney MGM Studios when it opened as the third theme park in Walt Disney World in 1989. And it not only expanded, but it changed its identity as it transformed, you know, from a sleepy half-day park into now one of the hottest Walt Disney World theme parks. So a brief history is, in the late 80s, Epcot, Magic Kingdom, you know, had their rides and things like that. And Universal kind of came along, and Disney decided, hey, we're in the movie business too. Let's kind of create something to match Universal's, you know, offerings. So the idea when the park first opened was that it was a
A
working studio. They were filming certain things there. You had backstage things that you could go see. So they had a couple of different stunt shows. They had things that showed you how special effects were done. You would go on the tram ride where you would see the back of sets and how they did certain things. And the idea behind it was different in some respects than Magic Kingdom. Magic Kingdom, it was all magical. You didn't see things out of place.
Behind the scenes look.
Where the idea, for Disney MGM was that you were behind the scene. You got to see things out of place, actors walking around and things like that. You could see how the movies were made, and over time, it kind of, they decided to try and throw in, Hollywood Tower of Terror and Rock and Roller Coaster, some of the thrill rides that were still kind of themed. But the other problem too was that they were kind of out of place. They weren't, they weren't themed very well. They didn't seem like they belonged where they were. So Tower of Terror opened in 1984, and that kind of started
94.
In 94. When the park opened in 89.
It was there to begin with.
It was there to begin with. So they, so they kind of morphed it and changed it, and then they did Toy Story Mania. And that became such a big hit and what was kind of funny was when we went out to California and we did Disneyland, we went on Toy Story Mania was there, and there was like almost no line.
Right.
But yet in Florida, there's always a line. There was always a wait. Just getting a fast pass, if you remember, sometimes took you a half hour back in the day when you actually had to get the paper one. So so again, they had all these great ideas, but just kind of like sprinkled, throughout. And what was kind of funny, I didn't even realize this, was that in 2017, attendance at Hollywood Studios was not only the lowest of the 4 Disney themed parks, but was actually on the decline year over year, because they started taking various things out, getting rid of this, and this didn't work anymore. And, finally they needed to really change things around. They, at one point, they had the Osborne Christmas lights, and that was a big draw for them, but the area of the park that they did it in, there was nothing else there any other time of the year. So they had all this space, and it was kind of...
Yeah, that whole Streets of New York section there always kind of puzzled me. Like you were supposed to feel like you were on a movie set, but there was nothing going on there.
Right, there was no activity, because at one point, if you remember when you used to have the tram ride, you kind of got off there, you'd walk around, and they used to, back in the day, have different activities and things set up to make it useful.
Yeah.
Over time, they kind of blocked things off, and once they got rid of the tram ride and they brought in the stunt show, it became really a dead area.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, when they started as an active, studio.
Right.
They were filming things there, so the theme that they gave you was the behind-the-scenes look.
Right.
Then they kind of switched up their philosophy, and it was, you're in the movie now.
Right, and that's really where they've taken it now.
Right.
It's not only the behind the scene, it's now be part of that movie that you want to be in.
Right.
So, of course, they first started with Toy Story. So they had, the Toy Story Mania ride, and then what they did was they expanded on it and became Toy Story Land, which really, if you take the time to really walk through it and enjoy it and realize how much attention to detail is put in there, you feel like you are in Andy's backyard and you're the size of a toy. Just,
Well, and they did the same thing with the Bugs Life playground area too, where you felt like you were immersed in that.
Right, exactly. So that, so it was nice to see it grow. And then, of course, they had, they built 2 other rides, to go along with it, and really changed it. And that kind of, you could see that was kind of the turning point for them.
Yeah.
So you had all of the toys, that opened up. And then obviously the big news that came around was obviously Star Wars was going to be coming.
Star Wars is there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you knew that. So where, so the attendance had been declining once Toy Story Land opened up, obviously, they got a bit of a surge, and knowing obviously that Star Wars was coming, and again, it wasn't just, hey, we built 2 new rides. Star Wars Land, as we know,
it's just immersive.
Is totally immersive. Totally, the fact that the cast members don't react that they're cast members,
right.
they're they're citizens of Batuu, and and if you want to talk about how much time and attention gets put into it, to
and
make
that's the thing, like a couple years back before all this opened, Hollywood Studios really wasn't a full day park.
Right, and
it was a half day park.
Right.
Well, now with the stuff that they've opened now,
it's
Star Wars alone is a full day event.
And we really did,
and not just because you're waiting in line.
Right, and we really, when we went, we spent most of our time in Star Wars Land because there was so much to see, there was so much to do.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you're not a Star Wars fan, maybe you wouldn't have wanted to spend, as much time.
Who's not a Star Wars fan?
I hate to tell you, but there are some people that don't like.
If you're not a Star Wars fan, you should not be watching this podcast.
But, there's all the different experiences. So not only having something to eat or, the lightsaber experience, you have the droid making experience. There's obviously enough to keep you occupied in Galaxy's Edge on Batuu, to appreciate it. And then, of course, you have, Toy Story Land as well. They are planning on building a Toy Story themed sit-down restaurant. So that's in the works. So I'm sure that'll be another thing, to keep you, active. And then what opened this past week was Mickie and Minnie's ride. Now, I know you're bitter. You're not the only one that's bitter. A lot of people.
Say, I'm not just bitter because they basically repurposed the Great Movie Ride, which was a great ride.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm bitter about is the fact that they own enough land to start their own country down there. There's absolutely no reason for them to be reusing a classic ride like that.
Well, and I think the problem, here's where I think the problem with the Great Movie Ride is that they didn't update it in certain areas, and they took away a lot of the little magic.
Right, the live interactions and stuff like that.
Right,
yeah.
they took away the hosts. So you got away from that. So if you never went on the ride, basically it was kind of like a history of movies. It would take you around to different scenes from various movies, MGM movies, Disney movies, Casablanca, Mary Poppins.
Dancing in the Rain.
Dancing in the Rain. They did like a Western section.
Yep.
Then they had like a gangster section. Then it ended with a beautiful Wizard of Oz set.
Oh, yeah, that was gorgeous.
And all while you're going through this, you had a tour guide, basically. There would be a cast member telling you about it. And what would happen is when, depending on where you were in the set, if you stopped at the cowboy section, there'd be another actor there who would take over your car.
So the tour guide would interact with the environment while you were a participant.
Right, so you had somebody that interacted with you in the Western, or if you were further ahead, somebody that interacted with you in the gangster section.
Right.
So that would always happen, and then as you would go through, you'd get to a section that was the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, not Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there'd be a whole little magical thing that would happen, and your tour guide magically, came back. They saved the day. And that was kind of cool and different. And you know, if you had been on the ride,
spoilers, but it's not like you can go see it anymore.
right? You can't go see it anymore. But what was neat was that, you know, you never knew where you were, which scene would stop, and then at one point they just got rid of it.
Yeah.
You didn't have a tour guide.
Just a drive-through.
And it was just a drive-through. You didn't have the same, because what would happen during the Western scene is like the building would go on, the bank would go on fire. So they would show you the effects of how they, you know, could have things on fire without them really burning down.
Right.
And then during the gangster scene, it would be a gunfight with obviously nobody getting hurt.
Squibs and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it was all this magical movie stuff. And then over time, they just stopped doing it, you know, and the ride kind of became,
But that's the thing. Like, why would you stop doing that?
Right.
It was a good ride.
Right.
You can update it. You can put newer movies in.
You could totally
they
revamp
update
it.
so many other rides to keep them fresh. There's no reason you couldn't have done it with that one.
I totally agree. I totally agree that, yes, Mickey and Minnie deserve their own attraction, but they didn't need to repurpose it.
A Mickey ride should have been in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
Should not have been in Hollywood Studios.
Well, because it's a movie, so it's that, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, this past week, Mickey and Minnie's ride has now opened. This is the first time ever that Mickey and Minnie have had their own ride in any theme park.
Which in and of itself is kind of a travesty.
Yeah, it is when you kind of think about it. But so, you know, from videos that I've seen, it does look really kind of cool. It kind of uses the same part of the same ride technology that Rise of the Resistance uses.
The free ride.
The free, you know, so there's some scenes that you see where there's multiple cars moving in multiple angles, but there's no drops or anything, so it's, you know...
there's no drops in Rise of the Resistance.
Right, there's no drops in Rise of the Resistance. So, you know, little kids can go on it. It's not, you know, scary in any way. So it looks cute. Would I wait 300 minutes to online for it? No. So it'll be interesting.
That's what the waits were on opening day?
Well, that's on opening day. Of course it was, because everybody and their mother was...
So then why didn't they institute the queuing like they did with Rise of the Resistance?
I don't know. And the other...
it was so successful
right.
with Rise of the Resistance.
And that's the other thing is, I don't know for how much longer the queue that they have for Rise of the Resistance is going to be going on, because I don't think it's going to be an ongoing thing.
A colleague from work is going down in a few months, and their queue, they weren't able to do the queue because the queue is going away before they go down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I knew at some point it was going away, but I'm sure it's going to be a fast pass.
Yep,
but then
that's
again...
what they had to do, a fast pass.
Oh, so they got a fast pass for it. So that'll be interesting to see once the queue is gone, what the actual wait time will be for that. And I'm sure it'll be 300 plus minutes for that once they open that. And then another thing that they kind of, you know, to add to the whole Hollywood Studios is now they have the skyline, the Skyliner that's now open.
I'm not sure that adds to it.
Well, it's you know, it's another thing that kind of got added. So it's an easier way to get to Hollywood Studios and Epcot. The new resort, the Riviera, is right there. You know, some people were saying, you know what, it is a little bit faster than the bus. You don't have the smell from all of the, you know, the
people?
Exhaust.
Oh, sorry.
The diesel from the buses.
Some people didn't smell so good on the ride home.
So, you know, well, that's true too. But again, it's another little added thing. So it's interesting because within 2 years they really did, you know, turn it around.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, because Epcot's really like the next one that's really
one's getting some huge changes.
That's getting an overhaul too. So it'll be interesting to see how much, you know, that changes. So again, you know, a really interesting article to see, you know, the difference. I've been to the park. I've been going to the park long enough that I've seen, you know, all of these changes. And, you know, I do see it for the better. And I'm interested also to see, again, where Epcot's going with it, too.
It pains me to point this out, but all these changes happened under Bob Iger. So it makes me wonder, once this new set of changes that's already in place gets finished,
Right.
what direction do we go? Because the person who's now CEO was in charge of the parks before this.
Right.
So are you going to see more favoritism towards the parks because that was where they came from?
Yeah.
That's where I'm curious to see what impact this is going to have on the
True.
parks.
But that's the other thing, too, is that once all these changes are in, do you continue to make changes, or do you, is it going to be something like, okay, we made these changes, we don't need to do anything for another 10 years?
Well, and I think a lot of that's going to be determined by your competition. I mean, had Universal not come in there and the Holy Land experience not come in there, you would not have seen Disney.
I really want to know if anybody has ever done the Holy Land experience. Please, if you ever
write
have,
into us and let us know.
Write in and tell. I don't know anybody that's ever gone to it.
But seriously, though,
no, true.
Had Universal not given them a run for their money and shown them what modernized rides can do, Disney probably would still be resting on their laurels.
Oh, absolutely. Because look at for how long, certain rides, didn't get updated, and there was no need to, because that's what
they owned the tourism business there.
Right. But I'm also wondering too, with Universal, since they've really only, as far as I know, have only opened one new ride, the one that opened
since the Harry Potter
really launched. So what are they looking?
But it's Harry Potter world, so it's kind of like Star Wars.
True.
You don't really have to do all that much as long as you capture that for the fans.
True.
So, but interesting to see the turnaround there. I mean, we've been going for 16 years together now.
Close to it, almost
16 years.
Aww. Our date anniversary is coming up,
and we've seen a lot of changes happen across all the parks, but definitely a lot of changes. I mean, the big draw for us, you would basically hit all your rides in the morning and then hit all your shows in the afternoon.
Right.
And then, if you wanted to stick around, you'd hit one of the restaurants.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, Hollywood Studios does have some really cool themed restaurants.
Yeah.
Which, again, they're designed to capture that nostalgia of the movies. And,
right.
And going back to the 50s and, your primetime cafe and stuff like that. So it's a cool experience dining there.
Yeah.
And then I still think it has probably the best night show with Fantasmic.
Hands down. I still cry at Fantasmic. I've seen Fantasmic for 20-something years since I first saw it in California. I still cry.
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen, and yet I cry at the end.
The testament to this is the fact that they built an entire theater for
just for it. You have a good show when the only thing your theater does is
show.
1 or 2 shows a night.
Right.
That's it.
So,
yeah.
So, I think Disney even acknowledged the fact that they didn't have the rides to make it a full day park.
Right.
But
they had the other things
in there to give you the experience. You had I can't imagine too many people went through the Walt Disney experience, the history.
Right, but that was also much later. Like, I don't know if you remember, they had the Foley Theater.
Yeah, that was before me.
That was actually when we went that time and you got your Han Solo in Carbonite.
Oh, okay.
So we went through that theater. So that was actually a little theater that they had. I know at one point it was somebody else that starred in the movie, but they had another where Drew Carey was in it. And basically it was like this corny little movie with all these sound effects, and they had people
Foley artists acting.
They had people from the audience that you could play the Foley stuff, and they would you got to hit this now, and they'd record it with the movie and then play it back, and you'd realize how hard it really was being a Foley artist. So that was a cute little thing. The other
American Idol experience.
The American Idol experience, which is now the Frozen.
Right.
But they also had, when it was a working studio, they had the Disney artists there, and they had a tour that you would walk through that was hosted by Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite, showing you, the artists, and you could actually look down, because that's where the Star Wars one area
Right.
became where you could look down and you could watch artists, you know, drawing different things that were eventually going to be, you know, part of the movie.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting again to see how, you know, it's gone through its phases.
Yeah, I mean, and
you know.
they've certainly done things there to try to keep you interested and entertained,
Right,
other
right.
than just rides. And
Right.
they're moving more towards the ride side of things. But
Right.
when you see the way they've done Toy Story Land and
Yeah, because we don't go on roller
Galaxy's
coasters.
Edge, you know, they're still putting that experience
Right.
in there so that you can just enjoy the
Enjoy it.
ambiance.
And that's the thing is, like, for Toy Story Land, we don't go on Slinky Dog Dash, but our
Right.
daughter does. But we get to sit and enjoy all the ambiance and feel like a toy in, you know, Toy Story Land. So
Right. Very cool. Shall we move on?
let's move on.
All right, let's talk about our Star Wars insights. Tell us about this stunning proposal we're about to watch.
So here's a little Star Wars Disney crossover. So Disney marriage proposals are obviously nothing new. You know, they probably happen at the parks almost every day. But this one was kind of a different one, and one that you would definitely appreciate. So there was a Star Wars loving couple that decided to jump to light speed and took their relationship to the next level in a galaxy far, far away. So Lana and Glenn are clearly two dedicated Star Wars fans. She is actually dressed as Kylo Ren, and it seems that there was a huge gathering that was happening at Galaxy's Edge in California, where a ton of fans, you know, they kind of did like a I don't want to say like a lightsaber flash mob, but basically hundreds of guests were there with their lightsabers, and it was at night, so it was beautiful. And she decided that this was the perfect opportunity to propose to her boyfriend, surrounded by all these other Star Wars fans with, you know, all of their lightsabers. So you can see the video.
That's a lot of lightsabers.
That's
man.
a lot of
Holy
lightsabers.
moly.
Yeah.
Good to see there's some Sith red in there, too.
Yeah, yeah. So this was, you know, so she figured this was the perfect opportunity. You know, so I guess there were, you know, photographers there. I don't know
Well,
if this was like
I guess she felt sure if he said no,
somebody would.
there was a
you
lot of
know,
people that would influence him.
Right, he'd be frozen in carbonite or something. So yeah, you know, Disney does the what's the they you know, there's always something going on fan wise. I know there was like a Jungle Cruise Day.
So was this a specific event that they decided to do this for?
Yeah, I think this is like a monthly. I don't know if this is a monthly or bi-monthly Star Wars fandom.
Because I see a lot of people there in costume, which is generally not allowed at Disney.
Well, see, and that's the thing is some, you know, kind of like Dapper Day, how you can kind of get away with it, or the Disney bounding. I'm guessing some of these are kind of like, you know, the Sith lore, you know, not the Sith, like the Star Wars bounding, I guess. Because when we were even at Galaxy's Edge, there were a couple of people that were a little dressed up, not like 100%, you know, dressed up, but at least in something. So, you know, tons of Star Wars fans around, and, you know, you are my light in the darkness, and you are my king and my warlock, you know, and I think she actually gave him a kyber crystal, I think, as like
Nice.
the engagement ring type thing. And
I think it's kind of cool that she proposed to him.
yeah,
I think that was really
I
neat.
think he gave her a kyber crystal or a Star Wars ring or something. Oh, will you join me in the fight for life, you know, and be mine? Aw, you know. And of course he said yes. If not, he would have had his
He
head
would have
chopped
been
off.
chopped up, yes.
So I thought that was, you know, that was very, you know, very cool. And
That's very cute.
yeah,
See, that was nothing like how I proposed to you.
nope, not
we
at
won't
all.
talk about that, though.
No, that'll be a special edition, you know, anniversary
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so that was all we had for Star Wars Insights this week.
That was it. Something kind of cute and romantic.
That's nice.
Aw.
We will come back with our entertainment news of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about washing your hands a lot.
So, you can't escape it, unfortunately. And, so earlier in the week, there was an article that I had found talking about how the Emerald City Comic Con was still going to be going on, but that they, were allowing people to...
So where is Emerald City Comic Con held?
Emerald City Comic Con is actually in Seattle, Washington.
Okay, so we're obviously a major outbreak of coronavirus has occurred in the United States.
Right, exactly. So they were still planning on doing it. They had posted on Thursday, saying that they had been talking about it. They decided to still go forward with it, but basically use your judgment. If you feel like you'd be okay going, come. If you don't, we'll give you a refund. And they had a link to their website about,
well, at least they're kind of cool about that.
Right. They weren't being jerks about it and saying, no, if you're not coming, you're not coming. The one artist, Karen Hallion, who I follow and love all of her work. She was actually supposed to be going.
But you recently got some of that, didn't you?
I did, for my birthday.
Good for you.
So she actually had posted that she was very upset that she made the decision not to go because she lives in the Boston area, so she was going to have to travel, fly.
Right.
And she said, I'm really sorry. I'll be there next year. I just think at this time, it's best if
That's a smart move.
I stay home. And as I was putting together the show notes yesterday, obviously things have changed, and now Emerald City has now postponed it till sometime this summer.
Yeah.
They're not even doing it at all because it was supposed to be, in the next couple of weeks. And they said, with everything going on, with so many people affected, and, they couldn't do it. They didn't want to cause more harm, for people traveling, because it's supposed to be such a fun time and everything. They just couldn't see, causing harm, which is
the
smart.
danger, not only the danger, but the stress of the whole experience.
Yeah.
And this certainly is the first convention to cancel.
Yeah. So this is, so they're hoping. They don't have a date yet. They said basically, keep checking in. I think they were still going to be issued. So from the article, I believe they are issuing refunds. So it's not like, hey, hold your ticket and,
right.
So submit your refund. It'll probably take about 30 days to get it. And then once they have, a set date for summer of 2020, go and buy, your tickets again. And unfortunately, we're going to see, a lot of this. And, in our next story, it's another,
and honestly, it's the responsible thing to do.
Absolutely. We were talking about it, last night that, NCAA, basketball tournament, they made the decision, it's not, the Sweet 16 or anything like that, but it's a smaller level where two of the schools that are going to be playing, they're not playing to anybody. It's
There's no
just going to be them. Not
there.
even their family is allowed to come.
Right.
And they're taking precautions. Now, I did see an article this morning that the NBA is they haven't decided to do that yet, but they basically said, be prepared to play games in front of nobody. And I think LeBron James came out and he's like, well, I'm not going to play if nobody's going to be there. But then that's not being very responsible because you're asking people. Yeah, you're asking people to come and
you want people to risk their lives just to watch you play a game.
Right.
That's
where
idiotic.
You know what? I rather watch it on television,
Right.
So it in this day and age, do you go out and still participate in these different activities, or do you stay home? That's where I guess a lot of it, you have to live your life, but you have to live it smartly too. It's one thing, when 9/11 happened and everybody, was scared to do things because you didn't know when the attack was going to happen, and there were people that wanted to stay in a bubble and they didn't want to go to different events or things like that. And then there were other people that were like, you know what? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
I can't, and I think there are people that are
Well, that's completely different
right.
than this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in this case here, you're talking about being part of the problem.
Absolutely.
If you go out to a convention someplace and there's someone that's sick and you
right.
become a carrier for it,
right.
you're then spreading the disease
right.
itself.
Exactly. And that's where,
And let's be honest, these are conventions. They're not life-altering events.
Right.
You're not saving people's lives.
Right.
There's no ultimate importance to it.
Right.
These are recreational things. At best, they might be professional conventions you're going to.
Right.
It's not worth the risk.
Oh, absolutely.
It may be, it may be overly cautious to cancel
but
these.
But
you'd rather do that than to have the situation that you have in other countries that have not had these controls in place.
Right.
I mean, we're to the point now where we're not just talking about not going to conventions. There are communities that are talking about instituting self-isolation programs for people.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where if you're told you need to isolate your community for 14 days,
right?
How are you going to live? How are you going to get food? This is what it's coming down to.
Yeah.
And for people to worry about going to a convention is just silly.
Right.
For professional athletes to take this irresponsible stance of, oh, well, I'm not going to abide by this or I'm not going to play because no one's there. It's idiotic to think that way.
Right.
If you do the right thing and you let it burn itself out within a couple of months, then you can go back to life.
Right.
The problem is that this is hit so hard, spread so fast.
Right.
And at this point in time, there's over 100,000 infections with almost a 3% mortality rate to this at this point, which, everyone says, oh, well, the flu's killed more people. Well, yeah, but if you look at it percentage-wise, there's about a 1% mortality rate on the flu.
Right.
This is literally twice that at this point in time.
Right.
So this isn't something to mess around with.
Yeah.
And going to a convention just simply is not as important as your health.
Right, exactly. And if it means, renting something from Netflix, and staying home and binge watching, various different things, then do that and wait for it to pass and wash your hands.
So Emerald Comic Con's not the only one that has canceled.
Yeah, so now we have South by Southwest, which is an annual tech, film, and music conference that's held in Austin, Texas, and they have now canceled. And this convention actually goes from March 3rd until March 22nd. So this is usually a much longer festival that goes on, and it's obviously a big surge for their economy in Austin. So this is the first time in 34 years that it's actually being canceled. They said they were devastated to share the news, but they know that it's the right thing to do. Several days leading up to it, various people were backing out guests and presenters. Twitter was actually the first company to pull out, saying that they had a new policy restricting all business travel because of the virus. Facebook, Intel, and other, companies followed suit, and there were some companies that were going to be trying to still present, but through Skype, or other, means like that. And then, they were able to get other guests to kind of fill in. But then as time went on, it just made more sense, because you're talking, thousands and thousands of people that, were going to be, coming into the city.
Even your company is instituting, travel restrictions.
We ended up getting an email basically saying that anybody that had an airline ticket for the middle of March and on for like the next 2 to 3 months. It was going to be canceled. Any hotel rooms were going to be canceled. Any meetings that needed to be done would have to be done through Skype.
Right.
No large gatherings of any sort, for the foreseeable,
I don't want to turn this into a political thing.
Right.
Because I hate dragging that stuff out. But I think a lot of these self-initiated ventures that companies and conventions are doing really are in response to this overall lackluster response of the federal government at this point in time. I think there's very little confidence that people have right now, at least from the accounts of the people that I've talked to directly, that the federal government's doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic given all the criticism that the United States has lodged at North Korea and China and all these other countries who tried to cover it up and mishandled it.
Right.
People are coming down on Italy for their outbreak because they did nothing to contain it there. And, the message that we're getting from our government here is a mixed batch of contradictory statements.
Right.
And someone being put in charge of the crisis who has absolutely no qualifications to handle such a crisis.
Absolutely.
So I applaud, the organizers of these events.
Oh, absolutely.
For taking the initiative themselves.
Right.
For doing things that the federal government should already be doing.
They should have been doing it months ago.
Absolutely.
And
it's nice to see that people are intelligent enough to do common sense things like this when the federal government fails us utterly like it has.
Right.
Okay, that's all for my political statement.
Okay, that's fine.
I think that was all we had for our entertainment news.
Yeah, because, everything else, I didn't put the story in here, but one of the other things, we've been talking about for months is the new James Bond movie.
Right.
That was supposed to be opening up in April, and they've actually pushed that back to November now.
Yeah.
So, it's starting to kind of trickle, throughout the whole entertainment. I'm sure there, are probably concerts that are being pushed out and moved around and things like that. So,
as long as we don't miss out on Return of the Jedi in concert at the Man this summer, I'll be fine.
I hope so. Well, it'll be the summer by then, hopefully.
Hopefully this will have passed and we'll have taken the right steps.
Yeah, hopefully.
By then.
Yeah.
So, all right, we will come back and we'll talk about our insightful picks of the week.
Okay.
A new one for us today.
I do.
What do we
got? I have been wanting to see this movie for a while. It definitely seemed like it was something I'd be interested in. And so last weekend, I finally got around to watching it, and it is Knives Out. It is a 2019 American mystery film written by your best friend, Ryan Johnson.
Oh, goody. At least it's not Star Wars.
At least it's not Star Wars. So he directed and produced the film along with Ron Bergman, and it is a modern whodunit. And the film follows a family gathering that has gone awry after the family's patriarch's death leads to a master detective to investigate. It's a great ensemble. It's Daniel Craig, speaking of James Bond. We have Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson.
Jesus, how'd they get all these people?
Tony Collette, and Christopher Plummer.
Wow.
And he plays the father in it. So it's a great cast. It definitely reminds me of like an Agatha Christie whodunit. Basically everybody had motive to doing this. And it's just interesting to see all of these actors. Don Johnson, I can't remember the last time I saw him in anything, and he played this really sleazy dad, in the film.
Yeah, he could do that.
He really did. And Chris Evans was like a jerk. Like here, Captain America saving the world, and now
I thought he was a smart guy.
Yes, that was awesome. And here he's like a jerk. You're kind of like, ugh, I don't like you like this. But funny in different aspects. And then Daniel Craig actually plays the detective, who he kind of has this like Southern New Orleans weird accent. He's
that'd
kind
be
of like,
interesting.
yeah, it was very hard, listening to him and whatever, but a really good movie. And what was actually interesting was that in February that they are talking about a sequel, but basically what it would be is that it obviously, since they found out who really murdered the patriarch of the family, it would actually be Daniel Craig's character, basically going and solving another murder mystery type thing. So really interesting, again, if you're into the whole whodunit, Agatha Christie type, Murder on the Orient Express, it's a modern twist on it, of whodunit. So
cool. Nice pick.
Thank you.
So my pick this week is kind of a repeat pick. A few weeks back, we were lucky enough to play host to Dan Fuchs from the financialfix.co on a podcast about financial responsibility on our Insights into Teens podcast. Well, it turns out Dan is also a very talented musician.
He's like a jack of all trades.
He is.
Or a Dan of all trades.
We were invited to come see him play live at a local establishment nearby. And we went out on Tuesday, was it?
Tuesday night, date night.
Tuesday night, we went out and we got to see him play. He is a one-man band, thanks to the use of some creative technology that he has. And he was doing a 2-hour set at this establishment. Playing acoustic guitar, had some accompaniment with his technology there, and we had a very good time.
Yeah, we did.
He's very talented, played pretty much all the kind of music that I like to listen to, a lot of classic rock stuff there.
With some modern stuff mixed in.
Some modern stuff mixed in there, and I was telling him that the more I interact with him, the more impressed I am with him. He is a very talented, intelligent young man, and I thought he deserved another plug on the show here. And we'll actually be closing out the show today with some footage from that set, just to kind of drive home the point of how talented this young man is. I am a huge Eagles fan, the rock group myself.
Are you? I never knew that. Oh my God. We've been together how long? No.
He was kind enough to treat us to 2 Eagles songs during the set, one of which is what we'll be closing the show out with today. So props to Dan. Great mind financially when it comes to money. Great talent when it comes to music as well. Dan actually does piano lessons too. He teaches piano lessons as well. So he's a very enterprising young man. And you can check him out on Instagram at www.instagram.com/Dan Fuchs. That was my pick.
Very good pick.
So we'll come back. We have a couple of upcoming events, but we're not going to go into all the details. And there's 1 or 2 new ones that are in there. So what do we have this week, dear?
So obviously, like we've been, kind of talking with, the other various conventions that have been postponed or pushed out, as of right now, everything is still a go for some of these local ones, but, we're a week away. Who knows what could happen. So I guess
we've not there's been one outbreak in North Jersey, one outbreak in Pennsylvania. We've not been hit, or not, I want to say outbreak, but infection.
Right.
We've not been hit with the large outbreaks that
Right. There actually
Seattle
is one
has.
in South Jersey that did pop up yesterday. They're still testing.
Okay.
So again, nothing as major as some of the bigger cities. So
what is on the schedule right now?
as of right now, Monster Mania is scheduled for next weekend. That's at the Crown Plaza in Cherry Hill. That's supposed to be the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Then the following week, this one kind of popped up, is the South Jersey Toy and Vintage Collectible Show, and that's going to be at the Wyndham Hotel, which is in Mount Laurel, so not too far from the Crown Plaza. That one is vintage toys, collectibles, posters, rock memorabilia. That one is actually just on Sunday, March 22nd, from 9 to 4, 9 o'clock being the early bird admission, 10 o'clock everybody else, $5 for early admission, $3 for regular admission. So really inexpensive toy show that's kind of close by. Then the following weekend is the Delaware shows, which are the toy show, the Delaware Train Show on Saturday, March 28th, and then the April Fool's Toy Show, which is on Sunday, March 29th. Both are at the Newer Shrine Center in Delaware, Newcastle, Delaware. So that rounds out March. For April, the beginning of April, we have the Great Philadelphia Comic Con. That's April 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center. And then, kind of making its way as the warmer weather happens is Ren Fair season starts up. So the first one that kind of hits our area is the Ren Fair at historic Smithville. It's actually free. There's no cost for it. But if you've ever been to Smithville, you either want to get there early for close parking, or you're going to be parking miles away, and I don't even know if they do buses or anything like that, and probably because it's free. And that is going to be April 25th and 26th in the historic village of Smithville, and they'll have the cast that actually walks around is part of the New Jersey Renaissance cast, along with other
which we'll be having later on in the season too.
Right, that happens the end of May, into June. And then one last one that kind of starts the beginning of May is the Philly Ren Fair, which
I don't have
it's okay. That's fine. That's actually held at the historic Fort Mifflin.
Okay.
That's one.
Where we went to throw axes last year.
That was your first experience throwing axes.
That's right. Yeah.
So that one's an interesting one because the Fort Mifflin, they do pirate themed things, they do Renaissance, they do
the fort itself is a
war
historic
reenactments,
Revolutionary War fort that was built along the Delaware River south of Philadelphia, and it was designed to guard the Delaware and Philadelphia against British invasion, and they do a ton of stuff there. It's a great place to go.
And what's neat is usually when they have these different events there, it's included in your price of admission. You can actually go around. They have like a couple of little museum areas, and a couple years back they actually found what was it, a magazine?
Caisson.
A caisson that had been buried. They didn't even know it had...
It was a caisson that had been used as a prison cell during the Civil War.
Right.
And it was discovered by the groundskeeper mowing the grass accidentally.
He kind of fell, and what's neat is, from where the prison, there was writing that they found. Various different ghost hunting shows have been out there. They do ghost hunting events a couple of times a year there.
It's supposed to be one of the most paranormally active
we'll have to try your camera thing next time we go. Ooh, there's an idea. So yeah, they do a cute little Ren fair there. So not too big, couple of different shows. With food and different vendors. So, if it's something where you don't want to do a big crowded one.
Gonna be there?
Yes, and that's how I knew about these dates.
Okay.
So one of my Facebook friends is your friendly neighborhood Shakespeare. He's hysterical.
He is. He's great to go. So you've seen him. Oh God, what, 4 or 5 different locations?
Yeah,
now.
So he actually was the one that posted all the different Ren fairs because he not only does local ones, but he goes to Texas. So I'll even throw those dates in for anybody that's not from our area.
Right.
If you're listening, just to go see him, I would totally pay just to watch him.
I wouldn't pay to go to Texas to see him.
Well, no.
Locally,
I'd go to see him. So that's it. Because as we go on, we'll update.
Yeah, we're not going to give you the whole list every episode.
Right. And again, hopefully, the ones that are supposed to be next week, they don't, postpone or cancel anything. So,
right.
Well, fingers crossed.
So, I think that was all we had this week.
Yes.
We'll close out. And
contact information?
Oh, that too. Yeah, I guess we should invite you to contact us.
If you want to. If you don't, that's fine. We're not upset. It's okay.
Feel free to.
Never call. You never write. It's fine.
Stay off my lawn, you kids. Feel free to email us at comments@insightsintothings.com.
Or on Twitter @insights_things.
You can get our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings.
On the web at insightsintothings.com.
You can get our audio podcast at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com.
Or finally on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast.
Or, we need to add this, you can get us streaming.
You can.
5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. Something your daughter points out on her podcast all the time.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah.
Oh, and we do have 2 other podcasts that we can plug since she's always nice enough to plug ours. There is the podcast that you and our daughter do, Insights into Teens. Usually you guys stream live on Fridays for the most part. And then there is the monthly podcast that you and Sam do, which is Insights into Tomorrow.
And I think we've covered everything.
I think we have.
Let's have Dan play us